got their mic on?
Yes, sir.
What is this? All right. Good to go?
Yep.
Okay. This time we'll call to order the February 21st Walhalla City Council meeting. Like to thank all of you for coming. Got a good crowd here. Appreciate you being here. At this time we'll have a short moment of silence. This time we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Melendez, would you like to lead in the pledge?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just so everyone will know, Councilman Woodward had hip surgery last week, and he was trying to get in on the Zoom on the meeting, and that wasn't working, so we've got him on speakerphone here, so he'll be phoning in. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of approving our agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? I don't think there is any, so we'll move right on along. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. If everyone's had a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting, do I have a motion we approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just note that that's also accepting our committee night meeting minutes.
Yes. That's for both meetings.
Yes.
Both meetings, that's correct. All right, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Don't think there's any there. All right. Next item is public comment. Public comment is limited to 5 minutes and must be directed to council per city ordinance 2022-8. If anyone would like to address council, now is your time. Anybody? Everybody's quiet tonight? Okay. Thank you. All right. Next item is administrator comments. We'll turn it over to Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a few things to bring you all up to speed on. I did issue a letter of support for the digital economic environment. That's a grant that Oconee County is pursuing, and I believe Blue Ridge Electric, some of the other municipalities, Walhalla, we've signed on support of that, is to create an education network for rural areas to use a digital network for employment, economy, things of that nature. So once I hear more things about that, I'll let you know. I did talk to the individual for the Independence Fest. He's working on bringing the fair equipment back. I forwarded that to the Main Street Board. We'll take that up this week. And also I want to appreciate Mark Thompson at the Civic Auditorium. He is lining up our music for our entertainment for the Independence Fest. So we'll be doing Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and he's got a pretty good headline coming. So I appreciate their work on that. All the budgets have been submitted. I started reviewing those over the weekend. The city personnel handbook's been completed, so that'll be on your agenda in March to review and pass by ordinance. Russ had started, we talked to DOT and work on the South Church medians. I know we've gotten some requests for that. Also be working on the South Carolina Arts Grant for the Hispanic Heritage Festival. That's due the 15th, so I've got that doing. The code, the draft code is done. We're making just a few tiny edits to it, and that should be again in March or April. Y'all will see the entire code, the 400 and something page worth, where it takes all of our ordinances from 1855 till now, codifies everything. We've repealed a bunch of stuff that either doesn't meet state law, and I've got a sheet. They've created a sheet of everything that's changed, so you'll be getting all that as well. I do want to change up some of our budget process a little bit, and I'm going to shoot y'all some dates. I want to do 2 workshops, one for the enterprise fund for water and sewer, and then one for the general fund. I think there's some things we need to discuss for both. I don't want to try to cram everything in a 3 or 4 hour period or keep you here all day. So I'm going to try to do, I like to do 2 workshops. One for water and sewer and the other one for general fund, be all the other funds of that. We've started a recreation survey. We've had just about 300 responses within a week. About half the responses are 50/50s resident and non-city resident. Overwhelmingly, most of the responses were 8 years old. Most folks, baseball and basketball were the big things that a lot of people signed up for. There is obviously more interest to see more opportunities. That was heavily wanted to be seen. One of the questions, City Council's interested in flag football and volleyball. Would you support these? Overwhelmingly, yes, for both of them. And then the other pointed question was between flag football and volleyball. Rank your choice. Volleyball was number 1 at 56%. 11% didn't care. Doesn't matter. And 31% was flag football. So it's about split. And then the last questions, resources that Walhalla Recreation needs the most. 41% said more opportunities, 41% said facilities, and 17% said more staffing. So that's just an update. When we probably let the survey run another week or 2, and then once the responses start waning down, we'll turn it off and then have a final report for that. I just wanted to update you on that. And then the final fun thing is sewer, my favorite meetings to go to. I included in the agenda packet the letter from the Sewer Authority about the residential base rate and the volume rate. Instead of the cities collecting the money and us putting that money in our budget and having to budget to pay the Sewer Authority, we'll use the water meter readings that the individuals have, and then that's how we'll pay the Sewer Authority. So they'll use that reading, our water meter readings as what they're going to bill us with, or basically bill each person. We'll just pass the money through, so that money won't have to go in our budget. That'll help us on our debt ratio things as well. It'll be a little aggravating on the billing side, breaking everything out, but I think in the end it'll meet the Sewer Authority's needs. They'll be able to see the exact use that we're seeing, and that eliminates the years-old argument I started with the city in 2014, and it's been argued every year, the fuss about the meter way down on Highway 11 that we get billed off of that has probably 10 miles or so of Sewer Authority line. And so this eliminates all this. It's billed what goes through the residential users meter, not the meter way down Highway 11. So, and in that, and obviously we'll discuss this in budget time, but probably looking at $1.40 added on to the rate, and that's just to run the city sewer operations. So that's for some capital improvement to put that into a fund, and then the remainder of that is just annual cost, salaries, fuel, fleet, things like that. So, and with $1.40, everything else holds well. That keeps the sewer for the first time in the black. We're not having to take money out of general fund balance or take money out of the annual water budget either. So that's all I have.
That's a lot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wait till later.
Okay, we've got quite a few other things going on here. And the first one is a proclamation to recognize Black History Month and contributions of black citizens to Walhalla. And this time I will read this proclamation, and I'm going to stand up to read it. Whereas a week was chosen in February of 1926 to celebrate black history, as it is acknowledged the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln on February the 12th and Frederick Douglass on February the 20th, both of whom were recognized as champions of freedom and equality for all men. And in 1976, Black History Month was formally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of black history through experience which goes back thousands of years. And African Americans have been pivotal in the creation of a massive number of inventions and are recognized for achievements in agriculture, education, social studies, public safety, health, business, fine arts, entertainment, science, politics, law, engineering, and technology. And black history is not only a part of American history, but also has an important place in Walhalla's history. Black Walhallans have owned and operated barbershops, beauty shops, butcher shops, cleaning services, child care, teachers, TV repair, and served on Walhalla City Council. And during Black History Month, all Walhallans are encouraged to reflect on past successes and challenges of African Americans and look to the future to continue to improve society as that we live up to the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice. Now, therefore, Mayor Danny Edwards, proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month and encourage all citizens to learn about, support, and appreciate the successes and accomplishments made by Black Americans in Walhalla and abroad. And in witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Walhalla, South Carolina, to be affixed this the 21st day of February in the year of our Lord 2023. Next, we've got another resolution that is also to be read. Is that the first one?
Yes.
And This is resolution 2023-5. A resolution in honor of Black History Month to recognize the contributions of Martha Wright to local government. February is designated as Black History Month, and Black history has an important place in Wahalla's history. Mrs. Martha Wright was born and raised in Walhalla, graduating in 1962 from Blue Ridge High School, then moving to Tennessee for college. After college, Ms. Wright worked as a communications trainer, retired and moved back to Walhalla in 1990, and Ms. Wright found plenty of time on her hands and desired to do more. So Ms. Wright went back to work for Oconee County, staying 14 years mapping and assigning many E911 addresses, managing right-of-ways, and issuing building permits. And Ms. Wright retired once again, however, only to keep working for another 5 years for voter registration, spending many hours registering voters and staffing elections, helping people vote at Shaver Recreation Center. And in 1995, Ms. Wright successfully ran and was elected to Walhalla City Council for a 2-year term, garnering the second highest number of votes. And Ms. Wright was the first and only Black person elected to City Council in Walhalla. Ms. Wright, as a City Councilwoman, served on Keep Oconee Beautiful, American Red Cross disaster team, and building and zoning, public works and public utilities, City Council committees, and today Ms. Wright still serves in numerous capacities with Double Springs Baptist Church, Seneca Creek Baptist Association, treasurer for Blue Ridge High School Reunion Committee, and serves on the Blue Ridge Community Center Board. Now, therefore, the Walhalla City Council resolves to recognize Walhalla's Black history and Mrs. Martha Wright as an exemplary public servant, and sincerely thanks her for her contributions to make our county and the city of Walhalla a better place. And so it be resolved this 21st day of February 2023.
Yeah, we'll get her that. I need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
I second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
And no one is opposed, as we want to honor Miss Martha Wright. David, I think you're a good friend of Mrs. Wright. All of you are. Would y'all like to have a picture
Yeah, of
made
course.
with Mrs. Wright?
Follow your lead.
You a good lady. I just don't want you on my heels, sir.
All right, Ms. Wright. Let's see. Why don't you come right up here, right here in the middle, and we'll just kind of all gather around you here. How about that? Okay.
Thank y'all very much. I enjoyed working with all of you. But I'm not gonna do it again.
How many times did you say that?
Thank you very check in here?
Don't cash it.
Miss Wright, thank you for paving the way, for sure.
She still pays the way too,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. We got one more. And this is resolution 2023-6. A resolution to commend Corporal Parker Scruggs. Whereas Corporal Parker Scruggs is a duly sworn law enforcement officer for the city of Walhalla. Corporal Scruggs was on duty on January the 26th, 2023 in the city of Walhalla. And Mrs. Lucille Johnson of Georgia departed her home for an appointment in a nearby town, and Miss Johnson never arrived at her appointment. Fearing the worst, the Hart County Sheriff's Office and family began searching for Mrs. Johnson. That led to South Carolina, and Corporal Scruggs saw the story about Mrs. Johnson earlier in the day, and during the course of his patrol, he encountered a vehicle that matched Ms. Johnson's and made contact. Corporal Scruggs determined that this was the missing lady from Georgia, and he called a former employer that was the niece of Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson was safely reunited with her family the very day that she veered off course. Now therefore, Walhalla City Council resolves to commend and express its sincere gratitude for Corporal Parker Scruggs' exceptional awareness during this family crisis, his quick action, and his compassion for Mrs. Johnson. And so it is resolved this 21st day of February 2023. Y'all want?
Yeah.
This is a resolution. Have a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
First, shall we go get a picture?
Yeah.
We need a door right here. We need a gate or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Slide right up here just a little bit, and we're gonna all gather around.
Speak the least of the family too.
Oh, that's young. 70's young.
I'm not sure.
Y'all still get to? I'll talk to you later.
Ah, okay.
So.
I met her when I was holding Lamar and I go,
I think she said that she had been all over.
Yeah.
citizens, and we're proud of our police department as well, and Officer Scruggs and Miss Martha Wright. The next item on the agenda is a resolution to adopt a coach's policy. And at this time, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Burton to explain what we're doing there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is basically just acknowledging our business practices already. We have changed a few things as far as the background check. We just want to make sure that anybody that does volunteer or coach with the city of Walhalla does this background check. They sign it so they know what they're signing for. We also went through and took the league rules that I believe it was the ordinance that we did earlier this year, well, last year, about how to behave in city parks and stuff like that. But some of these, it didn't apply to coach. I would say it didn't apply. There's just some more language in here about what we can dismiss a volunteer coach for. Drugs, alcohol, excessive use of profanity, and then other reasons as determined by the city of Walhalla. Any conviction, guilty plea, no contest, or court-directed program in lieu of conviction, also is an application disqualifier. So, and these are just some forms that they fill out. The South Carolina Athletic Program, SCAP, they have a code of ethics that the coaches have to sign. And then this last page from the Dixie Youth coaches, they also have to sign that too. So this will help the rec department just having, okay, this is city approved. So when we hand these packages out, someone wants to be a coach, they'll know what's required.
What's the cost of a background check?
I've asked John. I don't know. He's been doing them all along. We do it through a third-party vendor. I've never seen it jump out on the budget report, so it must not be too much. But I'll find out for sure.
I think it's less than $25.
It's not much. So.
Is any questions anybody have with this?
We need to read the resolution, or we?
Yes, please. Well, I mean, you can, or you can just adopt it by
Title?
by title.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion then on resolution 2023-7, which is a resolution to adopt a policy on coaches.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of resolution 2023-7, aye.
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 And opposed? There is none. I think that one's unanimous. Okay. We don't have any second reading of any ordinances tonight. We've got first reading of ordinance 2023-1, an ordinance to establish a registration for vacant and abandoned buildings. This time I'll turn it back over to Mr. Burton to explain what we've got.
This is one that we went, and Ms. Myers, if you'd come up, if you had any specific questions, you can ask her as well. This is the ordinance we started discussing back in October. That went to the Planning Commission. They reviewed it, sent it on up to council. I believe we tabled it for a bit. We got where y'all directed us to do some more work on it. Since then, Ms. Myers has come on board, and she's taken over the reins on that and been working to clean up some things, to delete some things of that nature. So,
Well, just to proceed in proper channels, I'd like to make a motion on that ordinance, 2023-1, to establish a registration for vacant and abandoned buildings.
Okay.
So that's a
So
motion.
you're putting a motion on the floor where we can get it to discussion.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, motion and a second. Now the floor is open for discussion.
Okay.
I was kind of cautious about this before, about the vacant buildings, and I guess I've become more apprehensive as it's gone by. We lump it in with abandoned buildings, and I see that we need something for abandoned buildings. When it comes to a vacant building, that a property owner should be required to register and pay to leave his building empty. I just think we're tramping on his property rights. You know, we're not requiring anyone, if you're gonna fill your building, to be registered and pay a fee. So why are we doing that if they leave it empty? As long as the building is maintained and the property's maintained, I think the property owner ought to be able to do with his property as he wishes. So I think we ought to have a distinction for abandoned buildings, something that's not maintained, and there we ought to focus our attention, not in just that someone has it vacant, and I don't think it's any of our business to why he has it vacant, he or she. I think that's up to the property owner.
And I don't disagree with you totally either, but just like a business owner that is open, we do charge them a fee. It's called a business license, and we're collecting off of that.
Well, based on how much he makes on it.
Correct.
But aren't you paying property taxes on that building?
Yes.
And city taxes?
Yes. Yes.
So fair enough.
And correct me if I'm getting off track, but the main reason of this is for like protection of fire or burglary. If if something happens to the property, we got to have some kind of registration. If
Don't
it's
know
not,
how to get a
if it's
hold of
not
anybody.
occupied.
Okay.
So
If there's an abandoned building in someone's backyard and it gets broken into or burns down, most often than not, if they live there, the person's gonna be there. We're gonna know who it is.
Yeah.
But if you have a building on a lot, you don't live there, no one lives around it, or some of these properties on Main Street change hands, we don't know until the tax rolls come or they come in to get a zoning permit or anything like that. We don't know what the status of that building is or what that space is.
but someone's maintaining the building, so there's someone close that has access to that building. Maybe we could have a role to say if you're planning on leaving your building vacant, just call the city and leave your name and number for that vacant building, just so in case, or the person locally responsible, just so we can get into it if there's if we need to, for a fire, whatever. I don't know, we cover a fire anyhow. I don't think we're checking who's, I mean, if my house is empty and there's a fire in it, because we're all out to the movie or dinner, fire department's still gonna put out the fire. And I'll come back to a smoking house. It's just,
But for the folks that, and that's correct, but there's folks that don't live here, and in the middle of the night, we either have to get on an iPad, and we can find maybe who owns it, but we don't, it only gives an address, 911, or the tax map doesn't give a phone number. So we don't know, it might be the next morning before we are able to get in touch with someone. Police department, perhaps the same way. This is just to establish a registry for those, so we'll know. All right, it's supposed to be vacant. All right, the fire department knows it's supposed to be vacant. Are they going to search the building for life? Yes, but not supposed to be anybody, either it's vacant or not, or it's abandoned, so.
I don't know if we're still doing this or not. I remember when I was with the police department, we had a book. It was a business book. So if they got an alarm or anything that happened, we would get that book and we would look the person that owned the business, and they had a number down. We always went and got that. The police department seen when they had another, when a business was coming in, we would go down there and get the information off. I put it in our book so we had somebody to get in contact with from that time. So are we still doing that, or?
They do that, the fire department does that, but there's nothing that requires them to register that their building is vacant. They can shut the door and walk off and leave it and not have to tell the city. And we wouldn't know until we chase them down. This gives City Hall an opportunity to know, all right, this property is in use or no, it's not in use.
Okay.
I would like
And-
to share something, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I just came back from some training, and this was specifically on the training, and it was on public safety policy administration. And I know we were talking about reporting, right, to make sure. And if we're talking about a safety standpoint, it's important that we know what's out there, even though it's vacant or abandoned, whatever it may be, so that way our fire department, because what they were teaching us was make sure that you're creating policies that could be proactive to prevent any hazards or a potential hazard fall or something. So if we were to create this would allow our fire department, is that correct, to ensure that what is here, because what if it was burning, nobody was there, and it was reported like this, the floor is, and they walk in and they go straight down to the, danger. So basically, if you're looking at it from the safety standpoint, this creates that opportunity for our fire department, our police, everybody that's on the public safety, to ensure that what they're walking into can be a possibility of being proactive with safety gears, or what are they going into? So is that my understanding, that's what's going to be helpful
Yeah,
for?
that's part of it, yes.
Okay.
You're making some good points there, and Grant, I understand what you're saying on property rights and fees and inspections are two different things. If you have a building that has been vacant in Walhalla for 10 years, nobody's been in there and inspected it. Nobody knows what kind of condition it's in. If nobody knows who owns it, you can't get in to inspect it to start with. There's no way to. If a building is rented in Walhalla, our fire department is going to inspect it yearly. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
You're gonna check out if it needs something. If it's unsafe, you're gonna note it, and they're gonna have to make it safe.
Yes, sir.
If there's nobody in that building, you can't, if you don't know the owner, if you can't get in there, you don't know what kind of condition it's in.
That's correct. More importantly, with crews entering in the event of a fire, if we don't know the conditions, it slows down our response, and it also causes us to be a little bit more conservative rather than if they're familiar with the building itself.
Another point I would have to make is, if you've got, let's say you've got 5 buildings on Main Street, and there's one in the middle that has been vacant for a long time. It hasn't been inspected. If it catches on fire, what happens to the neighbors around it?
We had one that was full of wood. It was full of wood.
They're gonna burn up as well. So, I have a little bit of heartburn about the fees and having to register, but to have the information on hand as who the owners are, to require yearly inspections, I think is good for everybody.
Explain how that works again with the so if they come up and register, there wouldn't be there's not a fee.
No, there is. The first year is $50, depending on what category you were in, and the second, third, fourth year. And this part is an economic development tool, especially for the stuff on Main Street, is to get folks to use their space and not just paper it up. and leave it vacant.
I didn't know if I need to make a motion, but, you know, I agree with everything there. I think if they're gonna close the building up, they need to come to the city. And as long as they're keeping everything up to code like they're supposed to, and they're paying their property taxes and everything, then.
But it would need to be inspected yearly.
Right.
But our places, my house, I've been here, lived at this house for 17 years. I've never had anyone knock on the door to inspect my
I'm
house.
gonna inspect your house.
And
That's residential, though.
what we're not talking
We're-
about, this
this
isn't
is-
residential?
No, no.
If you have a residential house that's vacant,
If it's
if
vacant.
it's
If it's
vacant, that's what
vacant.
they're saying.
Yeah,
So you don't know the condition of my floors?
but it's not vacant, you live in it.
No, what I'm saying is what, you know, the argument about the fire department comes in, they know what they're gonna find. You know that's how it is no matter what. No
Sure.
matter people living in there and people not. You don't know what's coming in. You can come in, a fire's been burning in the basement, you got no clue. You're gonna be careful, cause you walk on that floor with fire burning in the basement, you can go through it. So,
But you're talking
know-
about two different things.
No,
You're talking
we're-
about one that somebody lives in versus one that somebody may not be living in for 5, 10 years.
but that could be in great shape. And one that people live in, they could just treat it terribly and that could be ready to fall down. But now what you're doing is we're not gonna mandate, people can just come into your house. That's why we fought a revolution. To not let people just come into our house, but we're gonna do that on a vacant building?
Grant, I do need to say something. I've dealt with 2 instances already. We had a house that was causing harm to the neighbor. It was bad. We couldn't-
Abandoned buildings, I'm making the
This is
distinction.
abandoned house too, though, what you're talking about. It was an abandoned house, and it put the other people was in danger because of what was coming into their yard. We could not find this person. We looked all over the place trying to find him. There's another house over here on Tougaloo that's burnt. We've been having problems with that too, so you can't find nobody, and you just can't let that stuff, we can't let it sit there like that.
That's why I'm saying, make the distinction between vacant and cared for and abandoned. Make the distinction,
Now
make
help
a
me out
rule
here.
for abandoned.
In our last discussion of this last year, we did talk about like a vacant building on somebody's property. That they're living in a house and they've got a vacant house on the same property, it's exempt from this. So you know, that ain't even in effect. If someone's on the property and maintaining the vacant building, it's exempt. This is all about a house that's sitting out by itself and nobody's in it at all, maintaining it, taking care of it.
No, maintaining it, they are maintaining it. That's the difference between abandoned and vacant.
Yeah, but if they're maintaining it and it's on their and they're living on the property, it's exempt. It doesn't even have to be registered because there's someone living it on site.
So say my mother's house, if my mother passes away, I inherit a house that's 2 blocks over, and I'm maintaining it, I'm mowing a yard, I'm taking care of the house, I don't want it to go to pot, but it's sitting vacant there. For one day, one of my children, I'd like them to live in that house. So now, I've gotta go and make a vacant, do this whole thing. 'cause
It
it's
doesn't
sitting
cost you
vacant.
nothing that first registration.
But it,
You don't want the fire department to know that's yours, or the
they-
police department.
They can do it, and I mean, we could have a role that say if you're gonna leave it vacant, write your name down, call the fire department, call City Hall, just make a rule, but you're charging them for what they're doing with their personal property. To me, it's not American.
Okay, so,
One of the vacant houses in my son's girlfriend house you guys are talking about, it has to sit vacant 10 years because her parents were in the process of a divorce. So they're both deceased, so now she has to register the house,
And pay.
but she
Not-
can't
not-
do
not-
anything with it till
not for
her estate
instances of
for her
probate.
mother's settled. Her dad died, there may have been bills, so the lawyer told her to let it sit for 10 years. TJ Bagwell told her to let it sit. And so she's let it sit, and, people that rented it tore it up, not her, so she can't rent it anymore. So her mother's dead, and she has to wait for that estate to settle. So the city can can just take it from her now while she's
No,
in
No.
no, heavens no. No,
She can't live in it.
If it's involved in probate, it's exempt from all this.
That's one, there's a lot of houses like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's in probate, then it's not,
that's right.
yeah.
There's a whole list of exemptions here.
Okay, that's why I was wondering because,
And we've also got three categories, ones that are being maintained, ones that have minimal violations, and ones that are severe code violations, so
you know.
there's a lot of things involved
They
here.
found her, somebody called her when somebody broke into her a while back. They didn't have any trouble finding her. And she's in a camper up there near DuPage when they still found her by cell phone to let her know somebody broke in.
Thank you.
But they did break in those vacant houses.
Brandon?
Yes, sir.
Randy, I had a question, I know we were discussing that. The fee structure, is that something that is kind of normal for our other towns and cities, or is that just what we decided, or how does that go?
No, y'all haven't decided, but this is a normal fee structure. I think actually we backed off on some of it. So, but it is a normal fee structure.
Do we have to do it the first time? Does it have to be there, like
Okay.
the fee?
It's not on registration. It's not. It's a zero.
For residential,
Yes.
zero.
It's $50 for non-residential, the first time.
Why do you have to have it for a business if the business is up to date for the first time, if they are registered?
To administer the program.
And you could you can change, if this was to get voted in, you could, I mean, we gotta discuss this a couple of times, and you can change any fees to any amount, do whatever you wanna do, just like any other ordinance, it's up for discussion.
Part of it's safety, and the other part is to encourage people, especially in the business district, to utilize their space.
So if I come
for
up,
business.
we shut our business shut it down, we shut it down, and it's up to code, and I wanna let it sits for a year, I can't find nobody to rent it, nobody's gonna rent it, I still have to pay.
If you've got it, there's stipulations on that as well.
Let's see here, exemption from the annual registration fees may be granted residential and commercial buildings that have been actively marketed for sale or rent over 12 months. Must be maintained to minimum code for the duration of the market. Buildings that are actively being renovated for up to 12 months, repairs and progression must be noticeable by the inspector. If renovations take longer than 12 months, they may request an extension. Properties that are in probate and actively being transferred, structures damaged by a fire or weather event may be exempt for up to 1 year. Financial hardship, structures that's not had any citations within the last 12 months, the category ones, and buildings that are structurally deficient that have been ordered by the city to be demolished and removed, in which the owner has provided consent to the city to demolish, and the city has accepted that consent. Liens are to be placed against the property to cover the cost of demolition. Exemptions from this annual registration fees not defined in this section may be requested by the Board of Appeals.
The government's granting you what you can do with your thing. That's the exact opposite as this country's been built on.
I see what they're talking about on the safety side, I'm against the money part of it, though, I can see what they're saying.
Sign a list. Hey, I'm gonna let it sit there.
Well, there has to be a balance here too, because safety, it has to be a priority,
That's
and how do
part
we
of the
balance
deal
it?
of living in town is keeping things up and presentable.
We're
Say
not
that
talking
again.
about it not being presentable. We're talking about a vacant building that is maintained, making a distinction between that and abandoned buildings.
Okay, so you want more clarity definition. Grant.
If there was a vacant building or an abandoned building next to your house, what would your thoughts be then?
I've got a vacant building next to my house.
A building or a house?
And
Vacant
it's
or
a vacant house next to my house. I've got a vacant house next to my house. It's Tim Addis's house. He lives in Knoxville. And I maintain the house for him because he
Okay, so
one
it is
day may
maintained?
move here.
So it's being maintained?
But that's what I'm saying the whole time. If it's being maintained, it's mowed, it's cared for, it's not abandoned, it's not at safety, you can look at it and see if something's maintained or not. That's why I'm saying there's gotta be a difference between vacant and abandoned. Abandoned's not cared for, dilapidated, health risk, safety risk, pest risk, cause the grass is 3 feet high in the front yard. Those things we have to deal with. Vacant, we're Americans. We've got freedom to do with our property as we wish. If they want to leave it vacant, leave them be.
Has there been a motion to maybe table this? I could not hear complete everything.
No, this is still just the first reading and
Still
discussion.
first, okay, okay.
I'm happy to make a motion to table it. I'll do anything to stop it.
Well, and I think there's points to be made on both sides. I don't have a problem with that. The situation of Mr. Addis's house and yours is totally different from what this is designed to deal with.
But this will include him. This will get him, and there's not just that. There's a lot of people out there, as we heard from Mr. Winchester when he came in here the first time we were debating that, and he was very concerned because he has places that he just stores stuff in. They're maintained, and he stores stuff. He should have the right, and he shouldn't have to tell us what he's doing with his stuff.
Well, that's a case I was talking about. He lives there.
No, he doesn't live there. He doesn't live at these buildings.
They're in his property.
They're his property, but he doesn't live
They're
there.
at the property he lives in that he was talking about.
Man, you remember,
Because from what I understood, they were in various locations
No,
around
they
the city.
were right there where his house is.
I'm gonna say it. It's on Hunters Avenue and Harrison Avenue. This house was growed up. You couldn't even see the house.
It's abandoned.
Yep, that stuff was talking, and it caused a danger to the people around there, and we couldn't find them. So that's where I'm coming from. I see what you're saying.
I'm with
Mr.
you on
Lewis.
that, dude.
And
I'm with you.
I think that's what the gist of this is moving toward. That's what this is.
And to speak to your example, it would be exempt because it would not have any citations within the last 12 months. It would be considered a Category 1 structure. It's secure, not boarded, structurally sound, no code violations, properties maintained a minimum code by owner responsibility. There would be no fee. They just say, hey, it's vacant, Grant King takes care of it. Here's his phone number. We're good to go. There would be no,
Then let's just do vacant buildings that way and abandoned buildings the other way.
okay. Let's,
So I make a motion that we table this until
Well,
we
let's
can
not
have it
table it.
written down.
We got another reading before we even.
We can change it now, Grant. That's what
Well,
this is.
this
part
is
of
a
it.
long thing,
Well-
and for us to all change that right now, you
We're
know
not
how that
gonna
works.
change it right
because we're
now.
saying, so I'm making a motion to table this and have the two things separated into vacant and abandoned.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Did Danny hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Do not have a second. Motion
Now.
dies.
Thank you. Now I'm gonna carry on a little conversation. And I agree with you, and I'm with you on the prime example of your neighbor. If it's a vacant home and it's maintained by someone, then it shouldn't fall into this at all. But if it's vacant and they come once a year and cut the grass, then it should fall into this. Somebody needs to know who owns that property.
That's abandoned.
Not necessarily. Somebody still comes once a year.
But the
and
grass
takes-
is that high.
Yeah, I know.
And we have, I'll give you another example. Chief Rice, you can attest to this. We have some buildings in town that the folks live here locally, they own the buildings, they're not anyone living there, and we're having problems with homeless people getting in those buildings.
Abandoned.
Well, it's according to the definition.
Well, I think we
We
ought to
know
write it
who
that
owns
way.
them, we know who owns them, they're local folks, but they haven't decided what they're gonna do with them. And it creates a problem for the police, it creates a problem for the neighbors.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're thinking of the same house. And in that case, I think we go to the owner and we say, this is verging on abandoned building, this is how we deal with abandoned buildings. Do you wanna maintain this property so it's not classified abandoned? We're letting you know ahead of time.
Well, we
But
can't
if-
classify it as abandoned now because we don't have any definition or anything
Well,
in the
that-
ordinance to deal with it. Is that correct?
The definitions in the proposed ordinance.
No, in the
Yeah.
proposed ordinance, but on the books now, is what I'm saying.
Under the,
I'm not sure we've got property maintenance codes, but
I'll look this up today.
Are you asking, Mayor, if we have like a policy right now to be able to enforce?
I don't think we have an ordinance that we can do anything to a building in that situation.
Right.
What we do, we have the IPMC. When a structure or equipment is found by the code official to be unsafe, or when a structure is found unfit for human occupancy, or found unlawful, such structure shall be condemned pursuant to the provisions of the code. And it goes through and lists the process to do that.
But,
But
I'm sorry, but let me interrupt you there. If you can't get in the building, and how do you know it's unsafe?
a lot of this, what we talked about today would be from you would look for it from the street, correct?
Yes. I have to be able to physically see it from the street.
Which in that house we're talking about, you can.
Well, I'm just saying from my standpoint, as far as, I think we need to definitely do something. 2 doors down from my house on Main Street is a business that's, whether you decide it's vacant, abandoned, or occasional homeless person living underneath the house, something's got to be done. It's not safe for the neighbors, it's not safe for the fire or policemen who have to go into a house that's, and maybe somebody in there that's, not supposed to be.
They part of the roof's up on
It's a
that too.
safety issue for our city workers.
Yeah, I'm with you, Danny. I just think that needs to go under abandoned. And the building owner, the homeowner is just informed that this is, bordering on abandonment and it's gonna have to be maintained or it'll fall under the abandonment ordinance, which we make.
There's definitions in here, abandoned building, any building or structure that's vacant under current notice of default, trustee sale, pending tax assessor's lien, foreclosure, transferred under a deed in lieu of foreclosure, any building that meets one or the more conditions cited below, doors, windows on the mortgage premises, boarded up, broken, unlocked, stuff like that. A mortgagee change the locks on the mortgage premises, neither the mortgager nor anyone on the mortgage's half is requested entrance to or taking steps to gain entrance. Reports of trespassers, vandalism, other illegal acts. A code enforcement officer or other public officials made a determination or finding that the mortgage premises are abandoned or unfit for occupancy. Someone's deceased and there's no evidence that an heir or personal representative has taken possession of the premises and other reasonable incidents of abandonment. A vacant building is classified, under three categories: no current code violations, building is secure, structurally sound, and maintained to minimum code by the owner or responsible party, which would, be a lot of places. Category 2, minimal code violations, structurally sound with minor code violations, is boarded and secure, not regularly maintained. Severe code violations, the building is boarded or needs to be boarded, structural deficiencies are evident, history of criminal activity, structure is unfit for occupancy, and the property is not maintained.
Can I make a suggestion? What about if you just go off of what Mr. Burton just read, on residential that falls under a category 1, it's still vacant because nobody's living there, but if it's in that category, there should be no fees.
And that's, it's not, it's exempt from the fees.
Totally.
Yes, under F.
Yeah,
under
I was just reading that,
Yep,
but
section 1-5 F6.
somebody just lets the city know who's responsible for it in case there's an emergency.
That's
That's-
what we're at.
And there'd be no
I
fees.
got fees in every category right there for residential structure.
Right.
So there is a fee.
No, there's a fee structure, but the example that you provided would be exempt.
It's exempt.
Yeah, so what I'd just say, let's make every vacant building except unless it borders on abandoned. If it's abandoned, it's abandoned. If it's, and these are
Well,
the
that
things
ca-
that we determine abandoned by, and everything else vacant.
We'll
It's maintained.
go back to that second category. You're gonna make the second category on a residential fall under abandonment?
If
Because it has
because
to.
criminal activity was in that one,
That would be the
It
third.
was
that was in the third. What was in the second?
second.
Give me the
second one
page,
is-
I'll read it.
On page 3, it's boarded and secure, structurally sound with minor code violations. That would probably be like a broken window, gutter hanging off, something.
It's board, the windows are
of
boarded
that-
up.
That nature, and it property not regularly maintained. So it might have, might be missing some shingles, might be missing siding, just.
So something like that,
several.
you see it becoming an eyesore, you let the people know this is heading toward abandoned. You don't want it to be abandoned, fix it up.
I can agree with that.
And that's
That's
what.
basically what. I think
Kind of, what we do, started reinforcing the IPMC, and that's what this ordinance does, what code does. We just don't have a registry.
And I think even
They
on
don't have to tell us.
your case, that your neighbor, there still need to be a registry, just not a fee.
Well, it is registered, yeah.
A contact
I-
registration. Just so the city knows who to contact.
Just call, yeah, if you're gonna leave a house, if people know that we're not gonna get in their business, and we
Yeah.
can be trusted, when we debate things like this, they start going, man, I don't want anybody to know it's vacant, because I'm starting to worry about these guys. But if they know they can trust the city, and it's just a matter of coming up and just letting us know, give us a call, and say, we know, then I'm saying, hey, that's great.
Well,
But
that's why
it's gonna be volunteer regardless, because what are you gonna do, impose a fine if they don't?
I like what y'all are saying, what Keith's saying, so I'll make a motion that we change that to that way in this ordinance now.
All right, you're gonna have to explain that to this way.
I know.
Sorry, that's big, David, that's big.
Yeah,
That's why I called for tabling it.
No, I like, as far as no fees.
Well, yeah, on residential.
So would you rather us go back and reinforce that residential and good repair, et cetera, is fully exempt from registration and a fee?
Well, I don't know about the registration. That's I just think it needs to, if it's that
Instead of
category.
being permissible to be
So if they leave
exempt
it-
from a fee,
so if I
we just
left it-
removed that it's exempt, period.
An example, perfect example is just like what we had, we couldn't find that person, they left the house. It got up, and it went a year, 2 years, we couldn't find them, and the neighbors is, they're
Oh, yeah.
scared, it was bad, we couldn't find them.
Yeah, I know the house you're talking about.
Then if they're gonna leave it,
Well, that goes abandoned.
yeah,
That's abandonment.
yeah.
So you
I think,
take action, we determine, we do.
What if they're
Probably.
in jail or a nursing home, would y'all take it or what?
Well,
no.
I
you
mean,
would
I'm just wondering.
you would expect we could get a hold of somebody that's in
Not if they're
jail,
in a nursing home.
or in a nursing home.
Yeah, nursing home, you can't get a hold of them. How you gonna get, like my girlfriend's mama, how you gonna get a hold of somebody that was in a nursing home till they died?
Well, that's gotta go through property sales,
Mayor,
that
can you
ain't
get
gonna
us back
happen,
in
that
order,
won't
please?
happen.
I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Grass will be yay high.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
We can't, we'll be glad to discuss it with
No,
you
it's not
after
my
the
property.
meeting.
I mean, I just
Yeah.
wondered what you do.
But we gotta get back on topic.
Yeah, but did they
Thank
call
you. I have a
somebody,
comment.
or- so I can let her know,
May
give
I-
them her phone number?
I'll talk to you after,
No,
I'll get
that's
with you.
fine. I mean, it's not my property.
I have a comment because I wanted to get some clarification. So you're in a neighborhood. The house was on fire. It got, the fire got settled down, and now the house is boarded up, right? But it's still, you can still see some, it's damaged, the house, right? It's in your neighborhood. Would this now fall under that category to get some accountability, what's going on, even though it's already boarded, right? It's in your neighborhood. Do I want to see that in my neighborhood? I'm asking.
Oh, to me,
Yeah.
my neighbor right across the street's got a car been jacked up for
No, but-
2 months. So do I just love seeing the car jacked up? No, but he's waiting on money to get parts, fix his car. So let him be.
Right, but
so
there's
if you're
two
waiting to get
But there's two
to
different
fix your
things.
house,
It's a house and a
give 'em
car.
some time.
Right, give them some time, but how much time do we give them to allow a policy to take in place? Do we give them 5 years? What if the house stays like that for 10 years? In my neighborhood, in your neighborhood, what would you want to happen?
Yeah, if it's
It hasn't been taken,
detriment,
yeah,
right? They're not working on it to fix
Nope.
this thing up.
and it's been there for
And yeah,
5-10 years.
Then it's an abandoned building because they're not trying to fix it.
Right, but we need something to make sure that, but it's also abandoned and vacant, cause nobody's living there.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the vacant, but abandoned.
Right, so that's why I'm going back to making sure that we can balance it off, because who wants to be in a neighborhood when it's just a matter of it's happening, how do you balance that, too?
What if, I've got a question. What if you separate commercial, from residential? Because you've got two totally different situations there. As I discussed earlier, a commercial building downtown that's vacant for a number of years and you have no way to inspect it, no way to get into it, versus, it's an entirely different animal from a house that's out by itself that doesn't adjoin other commercial buildings.
Well, it kinda is separated.
He's already doing that. with-
Yeah, it's got, cause there's non-residential, which would be all commercial property.
Yeah. But does it need to be in a separate ordinance, I
think so.
guess, with separate fees or?
Cause the fees are separated in the
Okay,
residential
that's
and
true.
non-residential.
I had to go back to my motion.
I mean, only thing I wanna clarify, and with Celia and Brandon, on if we keep everything, and I'm gonna give you one more good example. If a lady lives in her home on South Broad Street and goes into a nursing home, now the house is vacant, but somebody's still maintaining it, but we don't have her contact no more. Somebody needs to come to the city and say, this is who's responsible now. It's vacant, but it's not abandoned.
Needs
So
to
let's
be
ask,
That's
let's
where-
ask people to do that.
That's where the registration comes from, you know?
Let's ask people to do
Just,
that.
that's all I'm saying.
And out of the goodness of their hearts, as being good neighbors, let's ask them. But are you gonna find them if they don't?
Well, no,
Okay.
I don't want to.
So all you can do is
Yeah.
ask them.
but now, when it falls out of that category one, it's going in another direction.
Well, yeah, and then,
Now,
in which case,
am I getting too hard and confusing to make this work?
No, sir. On
It-
page 5, we have that if it is a primary residence and the owner is away for an extended period of time, whether it is for work, vacation, military, or medical reasons, nursing homes or assisted living, recovery after surgery, that type of thing would fall under that. It just needs to be maintained to minimum code. We request a current, courtesy registration, but
Yes,
it
yes.
is exempt from the registry. We would like for you to register if you fall into one of those categories, just so we know and we can still, provide
Right.
all safety measures to you, but.
Which is a good thing, because the police department, we used to have somebody be put in the hospital for a while. They would come by the police department and say, hey, we're gonna be out of town for a month. Well, the police department would do extra patrol of that, 'cause they knew, or the fire department knew that was they didn't have somebody, there was nobody in the house, so they know that they don't have to hunt for nobody if the house is on fire. The police department's going by it, so they see, the people that, would be in the neighborhood that was would people that are, crooks or something. They're seeing the police right by there all the time, so, and they wouldn't know that unless they came in and told somebody.
Yeah. So it becomes a good thing for folks that they'll want to register. I'm for that.
Okay, Brandon. Does this, help me out if this don't work the way I say this. So anything that falls under a category 1 is considered a vacant home. But that's category 1. Somebody's maintaining it. It looks like there's someone living there, whether they are or not. That is considered a vacant home and does not require a registration fee of any kind, just a courtesy.
Correct.
Okay? And anything that falls outside of that category on residential goes into abandonment status. And then it starts off on the fee structure.
Well,
And that way it takes the numbers out of that. The $50 fees, it takes them out as long as it looks like someone's living there, someone's maintaining it, and there's a name on the deed that we can contact or responsible party.
How much did it cost the city to bring that property back where it was safe within the property that we had to send the street department up there to take care
Oh,
of?
on Thompson Avenue?
Yeah.
It was,
We had to bring it to make that police officer, it was over.
It was around $2,800. That was a couple of years ago. I don't remember off, but it
That
wasn't,
came out of the city's pocket.
It
so
wasn't-
We had to pay
Yeah.
that.
just a couple $100.
No.
It was a little bit.
I agree. You delineate what abandonment is. And if they start heading to it, you're telling them abandonment is when all the fees and all this stuff's happening. When they start heading toward abandonment, we don't want them to keep on paying to keep it in, partial abandonment. Just keep paying $50 there, keep them off.
Right, it'll go
my
off of these fee
case. No,
structures.
it's like you're heading to abandonment. You need to maintain this as a vacant property. If you don't and you're classified abandonment, then there's
right,
all these things that'll happen.
right.
All right, so
Can we make that work? Like that?
We'd rewrite the definition.
That's
I
all.
think, it's basically there now.
I know,
I guess
just
we would
read.
remove the categories.
category 1 category 2 and 3 would be the same.
Yeah, well, category 1 would be totally vacant, and if 2 and 3 would fall under abandonment. However you can do the language on that.
If we zeroed out category 1 under the section 1.5 subsection B, if that category 1 just said 0 all the way down,
Mm-hmm,
does that
mm-hmm.
meet what
With
I'm
a,
hearing?
with a,
Yeah.
Cause they
That way
can,
there'd be no fee associated.
they can be exempt anyway. The main
Yeah.
reason for that is if they do get a citation. We can take that out completely and just have it 0 regardless if they get a
But
citation or not.
you'd still want registration of some type.
it would be nice.
Yes.
It is, we have it as courtesy at the moment if
Right.
they're away for an extended period of time.
Why don't we just reclassify this this is the ordinance to deal with abandoned buildings.
I like what
And
you
just
said.
deal with that, and as far as vacant goes, we don't have an ordinance for vacant buildings, but we put it on the website or whatever, please give us a courtesy if you're going out of town, if you're gonna have a building in town that you're gonna leave vacant. And we don't need an ordinance for vacant. they're free. But abandoned's another thing.
Abandoned or vacant, but yes. All abandoned are vacant, just not all vacant are abandoned.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So abandoned, it's assuming. To me, that's what I'm gonna go for. But
What about commercial buildings?
Leave it alone. Just like it is.
same thing if they're abandoned. If you maintain a commercial building, why is it our business if you want to have it empty inside?
Well, I know you don't care if every building on Main Street's empty, but the people that come here to visit do, and the ones that live here and shop do.
No, what I care about is that people are free.
Yeah.
That's what I care about.
That's,
So, do we want to just strike the fee on category 1?
We'll entertain any motion.
And that makes it work the best?
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
happy to do that.
Do you want to make that since you started?
Yeah, well, you said it, and
I'll make a motion to amend 2023-1 on category 1 to exempt all fees
I say,
for residential.
I say,
Okay.
okay, motion and a second to amend category 1 residential to where there would be no fees.
Correct.
Is that correct?
As long as it's stays under that category, yes, that's where we're at.
Okay. All right. Everybody understand the motion to amend? All right. All those in favor to amend the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? So that carries. So the motion or the document is amended. Now, where do we go to from here, sir?
still in discussion phase, so if there's other amendments you would like to make or anything else.
On commercial buildings, does anybody? you have
I
any
call for
thoughts
the
on that?
question.
All right, we have someone call for the question. You wanna vote on the whole ordinance, is that
Mhm.
correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Does he need a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so this is first reading. And the amendment is, what's the number, sir?
2023-1.
Of 2023-1. All in favor of the amended,
No, you've got to vote on to stop debate, so. yeah,
vote to
so-
stop debate.
Yeah.
All right,
So it's
all
called for the
those in
question.
favor of stopping debate on this?
Aye.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm good with that. And opposed, anyone opposed? All right, now we've stopped debate, so now we will vote on
On
the
the amended version.
amended version
Yes.
of this first reading of this ordinance. Is everybody together on this?
Yes, sir.
I'm confused.
Would you repeat again the yea and nay, please? This is breaking up a little bit, I don't wanna vote for the wrong one.
We voted on the call for the question, and it was all for, and now we're voting on the amended ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, and this is ordinance 2023-1, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All in favor of the amended ordinance 2023-1, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. All right. Motion carries.
Just for clarity, this is the first reading.
Yes,
We will revisit
absolutely.
this with the new
Absolutely.
amendments.
We're gonna bring this up again next month.
Next time will be the public review and, second reading, so there's opportunity to make adjustments.
Got it.
All right, under our agenda, the next items are discussion and action items, and Mr. Burton, the first one is sanitation truck. I'll let you tell us about that one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This came up last time. I believe I was out sick. Y'all tabled the motion, or tabled the action. Put it back on the agenda. We went back through Sourcewell, found a better price truck, and one that's local. We can do business with someone out at, and easily. This is on state contract, if you will. Actually, it's through North Carolina, through Sourcewell, but, this is, a mechanism for us to purchase this. It's the same F-550, non-CDL size rear load trash truck. The specs are in there. I believe Mr. Price is here if you have any specific questions about it. And for considerably less what we looked at before, for $134,643. This will be paid for out of the funds that we got from the burn trash truck. There's some pictures in there on what it would look like. As far as events, it would help them. They could drive the smaller truck. If the truck breaks down, two of the guys that might be on the street crew and not the sanitation crew can jump in, help fill in a gap. And there's some properties out near the lake, and there's probably some properties here in town that it's hard for us to get the big truck in. They can go in and pick up trash with this smaller truck. And in some of those communities where we can't, it's difficult to get the big truck in, we may be able to pick up some more accounts. So I had Russ do some numbers, and they'd be able, to probably pick up around another 100 customers. And we're looking at, between $30,000 and $40,000 a year additional revenue for sanitation. So we'll answer any questions.
Questions?
I read it all, and I checked the specs out on the truck, and it's a fantastic deal. The only concern I have is, and this doesn't have to do within town with events where, we're going from can to can and this thing, but out on a route, if it's gonna take two operators.
This isn't gonna be, this is gonna be so we can pick up the ones, handicaps, things like that. You could do it with one guy, but you really need two,
Yeah.
because it is a rear loader, but it's a lot less expensive. A side loader.
Oh, I know.
Like this would be another $130,000
Yeah.
for the
It's
same.
double.
Right.
It's double. It would almost be better to buy a whole nother truck if you were gonna do that.
Right. So this is just like a small subdivision area or something you'd
Yes.
use it in, and in town.
It's on a F600.
Yeah.
And you'd be able to get it into tight spots. It's not as big a chassis or anything.
Oh, I
like
know.
that.
Yeah.
And in those tight spots, though, you could operate it with just one, the
You
the
can,
driver.
but the driver would have to get out, pull the
That's what
can
West
and all
Union
that.
does.
Well, they have two. They usually have somebody with them.
No, they picked up mine at about 4 o'clock today.
Then the other guy was out, but usually
Yeah.
They
They
never
do.
have two, Russ. I promise, they never do.
Okay.
Well, my concern with that is if he's getting a can off the side of the road, he's getting out in traffic.
Yeah, and now on the street, you couldn't do
And
that,
that
but
is-
on a small street, you
Right.
could.
Yeah.
But on a main thoroughfare, you
Right.
could
This
not.
would help us, just like last week, we had two trash trucks, two side loads down. We could at least used it and got them instead of we had to use the knuckleman to get them.
Yeah.
So it'll help
Yeah.
that too.
I'm all for it. I just don't want us to have to go next year and you come in and say I need another operator.
No,
Cause
no,
that's
this-
gonna hurt us.
This will help, you don't have to have a CDL at all.
Absolutely.
It'll help
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, you could do it with one guy, but it's gonna be, if you've got a bunch of them to do, it's gonna be hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
And do we have another full-size trash truck in the works?
Yes.
We've got the front,
Would that pull somebody off of another route to have to do that?
no, sir.
If you had to use two instead of one person,
No,
that wouldn't affect
That wouldn't affect the trash route. Now, it might affect grass cutting or something. They would have to pull a non-CDL driver off, but it wouldn't affect the other route unless
Okay.
that
Right.
route's truck is down, and then that driver could take the smaller truck and get what they can.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a big enough truck, we can get quite a few cans on it, but it's not so big, it's not as big as what we've got.
We don't wanna do that every day, but I mean, in a pinch, you could do it.
So right now, the only side loader we got is the
No,
new one.
We've got the 2020 and the 22, or 2019 and 22.
Okay.
And then we've got the new front loader coming.
Coming.
And then,
And we've
You
got
should
the
be
used
set for
front
a long
loader.
time.
the only things on the front loader, but that's, we should be able to make it with that.
I was trying to find the specs on the box.
It's 11 yard, I believe.
Any other questions?
So that whole bed, the tailgate, the loader assembly and all raises up to dump it. Okay. I mean,
Are we,
and it's going, that other truck will pay for it, won't it?
Yes,
So it's covered.
it's covered.
I'm good with it.
okay, do I have a motion?
Y'all good with it? I'll make a motion to move forward on that purchase.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second, is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's none, it's unanimous, so, getting you a new trash truck.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Alright. Next item is appointment of Board of Zoning Appeals seat. Back to Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have had an absent, or a resignation of one of the BZA members. They moved out of the city limits, so that left a spot open. We posted it and had one application. Mr. Kenny Johns has applied for it. We can discuss it. If you want to discuss it in detail, I would recommend you do that in executive session, but if you're okay with it, you can go ahead and move it now or discuss it later.
I'll make a motion, we accept it.
I
Have a
second.
motion second. Any discussion?
It's just there's only one person that wants it, and we got one opening?
He's got a lot of expertise,
Yeah,
so
thank God he wants to do it.
been involved in the city for many years, so.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Welcome to the planning, or the zoning appeals. Alright, now we're gonna do an update from the planning commission. Celia, you're back again.
Go ahead.
The planning commission met last week, just a quick update, they did review, initial review of 3 ordinances, one dealing with our animal ordinance and backyard chickens that council discussed the week prior, one on short-term rentals, and one for the right-of-way annexation of right-of-way that are abutting the city limits that we do not currently have within city limits. We received consent from the Secretary of Transportation, Ms. Christy Hall, with SEDOT, so we are just moving that through. Those will all have public hearings as well as the historic preservation ordinance at their March 13th meeting, and then from there they'll make their formal recommendations, and I hope they will have that ready and sent to full council at your council meeting in March.
Okay.
In addition to that, they did recommend approval of the comprehensive plan outline, which you'll see next, and then they let's see, they had one other item. My mind's going blank now. My apologies. And they accepted the preliminary plats for the month of January. And that's all I have for the update, unless you have specific questions on anything.
Questions?
We did have a resignation on the planning commission as well. Ms. Orr, sent her resignation. She's going to continue in that capacity until we have a replacement, so we'll advertise that spot as well.
Okay. We good there? All right.
Yeah, as far as that, and she's got some comp
Yeah,
plan
now
in
we're gonna
place.
talk about comprehensive plan. It's gonna get
Yes.
comprehensive.
Yes, it is time for the update to the 20-year comprehensive plan. Again, Planning Commission recommended approval and sent what is in your packet to full council. What you have is a very broad overview of what we'd like to proceed with as far as our schedule, beginning the process in the spring of 2023, hopefully having the entire document completed and adopted by council by the winter of 2025. That does seem like a long process. It is. It starts off with a lot of public engagement, a lot of public input, creating the community vision and the community's goals that they want to see in that 20-year time frame. And then we go back from there and we actually look at our baseline data and what strategies are going to be needed so we can make these goals a reality and make this vision a reality. In addition to that, you should have a draft, change it up however you'd like. My proposal is that there would be a steering committee and then focus groups. The steering committee is ultimately our accountability, making sure that we are moving forward, making sure that we're staying on track. Our focus groups would be specific to one of the 10 elements that we are required by state, but also it's just good practice that we will be looking at and making sure we have goals. I have names tied to them based on either the committees that you're currently on or the interest that I have heard over the last couple of months, but feel free to change that however you would like. I do request that at least one council person and planning commission individual serves on each one, because ultimately planning commission is charged in state code to actually have this draft and then recommend it to you for the adoption. I know that was a very high look. I'll go into any more detail that you want, but right now is really, are you okay with this schedule? Are you okay with having a steering committee and focus groups?
Yes, you'll need to designate the steering committee and these focus groups who you would like to see on it. If there is citizens that you would like to see on the steering committee, we'll open those up for nominations or applications.
Kind of hard to do that tonight, yeah, talk to
It
anybody.
is, it is. So we'll leave that part. Any citizen nominations, we'll post that so people can apply for it and y'all can talk to them as well. So.
Just to get, I'm not up to speed on what's going on here quite.
Okay.
So bear with me. So we're looking ahead for this 20-year. Is that what that's what you're talking about? Looking
Yes,
ahead
it
for
is.
20 years. And
It
the
is.
state requires us to do that.
Correct.
Okay. So, and what you're suggesting is we have separate committees to plan this out.
Based on the different elements, state code requires that we address 10 different elements in our comprehensive plan. Maybe think of it as a master plan
Okay.
for the city.
Mhm.
It will include population, economic development, natural resources, resiliency, community facilities and services, housing, transportation, community, land use, and then also our priority investment. So all of those items are required by state code that we have a plan for it.
A plan.
A plan, a 20-year plan of what we're going to do. Now, I can draft it at my desk and I can give it to you.
Right, okay.
But it is better if the community is the one who helps write this,
Okay.
is their community.
And so that's the steering committee you're talking about?
The steering committee would be more, council, planning commission, and some staff members, and I do have proposed 2 citizens on it. But that is more for the accountability. The focus group, which I currently have broken out to include, say, population economic development together, or natural resources and resiliency together, housing and transportation together. They would be focused specifically on those elements. However, in the end, I'm gonna take a holistic perspective on this, or the committee is gonna take a holistic perspective on this, because we don't want to come up with a strategy that is good for this one element but is detrimental to another one. So that's one reason why it's a long process. But also, by having that input, having those different focus groups that can laser focus just on those issues, we make sure, or we try our best to make sure that we're not overlooking something, and that we can include as many people and as many partners as possible.
Okay, so now in November, we're gonna elect a new council. So we've just said, okay, for 20 years, this is what we're gonna do, but now we've got a new council elected and they're gonna start in January. So,
Currently, as far as November, we might be to the stage to where the community vision is adopted.
okay,
The plan wouldn't be adopted according to this proposal until winter of 2025.
okay, so
So,
we're gonna have an election though, right after that. There's always an election every 2 years. So is the city now bound to this? Or can that council say, scrap that, we don't want their plan, we want this plan?
You're bound to one right now.
Well, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
That's, so,
It
we're
will-
making this
you-
20-year plan, but,
It is,
Well,
it is reviewed every 5 years. It is updated every 10 years. Again, that's state code.
okay, that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
But state code's not mandating that it be followed.
Yes, it does.
Well, so then why do we elect a council every 2 years?
You can change, but that council can update it every 5 years. It was last updated in 2020, I think. That was before my time. But it can be updated every year. The state requires it to be updated every 5 years.
Yeah, the plan,
The plan.
but is that plan making us, I've never heard anyone say, hey, the plan says we gotta do this.
Oh, yeah.
There we have this ordinance.
Oh, yeah.
We should be doing that.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
Okay, but we don't do it.
We just
Well-
don't have, we're in that new phase of trying to redo the plan. So I have something, or the administrator or staff has something to work towards for the next 5 years, 10 years.
And again, this is coming, the way it is intended is that it's coming from the community. You stamp what the community tells you they want.
Cause this will have several public hearings,
Yes, it will.
probably 10 to 20 public listening sessions that
Depending,
each
yes.
focus group will have, and people can drop in notes. Yeah, so there'll be, this is a community involved process. That's why it takes so long.
I want to ask a question with my colleagues. How many of you have participated in the Oconee County Comprehensive Plan in some point or capacity? Just even if you're talking with your county representatives.
No.
Okay, well, that's, again, going back to the community, the beauty of our democracy, right? Like you said, a new election, new elected officials happen. Well, the community always should be able to dictate and tell your elected officials, this is what we would like to see, whether it be a new one or a past one. So I think in essence, I participated in the Oconee County Comprehensive Plan as a citizen, as a private citizen. And I was never in form of government. So I guess what I'm hearing you say is, yes, there's an election this year. We gotta still do the work, the planning, like Ms. Myers is saying, has to be done, and focus groups and getting community input. So when the election comes and there's a new body of government, you're still honoring what's already been done, because we still have to represent what the constituents want right now. when the election comes, you want to follow that with the new elected member of your body of government. Does that ring a bell? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, that's.
You got to have a plan.
You gotta have a plan, and you gotta have to make sure it's, like you said, now and then the future.
I mean, the one we're currently under is on the city webpage.
Right. This is a great plan.
Yeah.
Ms. Myers, I think your input on all of this has been great. I think this visual aid allows, some visuality of what we wanna see. I gave one to Ms. Martha Wright. I would like to see if I can get extra copies. I know we're gonna have it on our website, but paper traditional has always been a great way, so. I have a question in regards to this, your steering committee. What's your max that you can see? I know you have it right there, but what's your max of opening?
As far as the steering committee, I would like to keep it closer to the 7, similar to what you have here, just because if it gets too large, we can lose focus. There's plenty of room on the focus groups to expand a little bit more, and there's nothing saying that there can't be a lot more on the focus groups, and they come and go. Maybe there's a set group that stays throughout the duration, but maybe there's someone else who they feel really passionate about this particular topic in natural resources. They want to come in for a time to give their input on this one issue, but then maybe they rotate off over the 2 years and someone else comes in for something else. So we want to keep the focus groups a little more fluid and broad, maybe just a set group that stays for the duration. The steering committee, again, is just more of that accountability over it to make sure things are progressing the way they're supposed to. Whenever there's questions from the focus group, they can advise as much as possible, or they can be the ones to bring it back to council and get clarity from council or from planning commission, and then take it back to the focus groups.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
All right. Do we need a motion to approve this plan?
Yes. Or any direction if you want to redo some of it, if you wanna give Ms. Myers leeway to establish these focus groups and,
I mean, I'm looking at the focus groups. I'm fine with the way she's got them set up. I think,
I haven't found it yet. What page are we talking about?
101.
101, I was getting close, okay. So we've got 126 pages here, so.
It's that one.
All right.
Right there.
what's your procedure on those 2 citizens?
I would like for you to have input on that. Again, I'm kind of new, so you know someone
We'll
that would be great for this. I'd appreciate it.
do that
I
like
was
we,
just wanting her what she was looking for out of that. Just,
yeah, we'll do that like we do the BZA Planning Commission.
Okay.
People can apply or y'all can talk to them.
Okay.
And, and they can talk to her.
Oh,
You want,
I'm kind of sharing on both digital and paper, so.
Yeah, where do you wanna go here?
Oh, David wanted to
when we
comment.
make
David?
that selection,
Main
you,
Street's got right
does
here, the
council
Wall
wanna
Main
do
Street
that?
Board member.
Like in executive session?
Yeah. Yeah.
who is that? Or what?
That can be a recommendation from the Main Street Wahala Board.
So it doesn't come from the city?
It can.
I think that would need to come
That's
from the
just
city.
another agency that we work very closely
Yeah.
with, and
They are still part of under our umbrella for the city.
There again, I think it needs to be a board member that's geared up for this too. Don't just appoint one and say, here, do this. It needs to be somebody there on the board that's,
That's why it needs to, should go through the city itself to pick that person, is that what they're gonna?
you talking about on the Main Street board?
Yeah, it doesn't give a name there, it says Walhalla Main Street.
A member, yeah, a member of the board, Main Street board member. So it could be anybody on the board. And like I'm saying, it should be somebody that's enthused to be part of this plan.
Is that board changed any, or?
It's changed.
Yeah.
We can update y'all.
Yeah.
With the names. And just what I would suggest in that instance is they apply,
Yeah, I think so.
The Main Street Board member and the 2 citizens will apply, will designate, so ultimately you'll have 3 citizens or 3 people on there. One of them has to be a more Main Street Board person if y'all wish, and then the other 2 will just be picked at large.
Mhm.
They'll apply, and ultimately council will approve who those people are.
We can work through that.
Yeah.
But just same process like you do with the BZA and the Planning Commission.
So right now, the steering committee can be, you need direction on the steering committee? I know you have draft there.
Yes, cause
And,
that was just my initial take on how this could look. There's no set in stone
Mhm.
how-to manual on this. Each community does it differently.
Mhm. Well, I know you mentioned the steering committee, you want to keep it by 7, right, essentially. How do we also put accountability among our body of government? I know you only have our mayor on there, but how can we also include accountability for the other councils? Would you not ideally want to see the steering committee with all the council members, or at least 4? I'm just trying to understand the difference between that and the focus group coming down, I guess.
The focus groups are going to be just on those certain elements that they're covering,
Mhm.
even though you're welcome to go to any and all of the focus groups, of course, but there would be one that you are responsible for primarily, that you helped lead throughout the process. So there would be some committee meetings or focus group meetings, and we would discuss a way to garner public input or to review what was said at a community meeting. I'm pretty good, but I'm not that great. I miss things that someone says, and maybe you had a conversation that I didn't have with a citizen, and they had a great idea that you wanted to share, and make sure that all the voices get counted. So that type of thing. And then from there, help develop that community vision.
Okay.
If I had everyone from council on the steering committee, then I would just come here every month, which I can do that.
Mhm.
It just kind of it ties the hands a little bit more.
You know, I just got this today, because my email wasn't set up. So I'd personally just like some time to look over it before we just say, I mean, we're looking at a long time. Looks like we're not pressed for time on this one. So I'd just like some time to look over it, think on it.
Well, let's look at the time frame here. We're in spring, right?
Correct.
Kickoff process by establishing review baseline data and trends. So I think the holdup with that will be we can't really start planning for community events or public engagement, right? We won't be able to if you don't have.
I mean, I can do it by myself, but it'd be great if I had a group or a committee to help.
Yeah. How much time do you think our whole team needs?
I'm just talking, you know, we could even look at it committee night.
Right.
Just 2 weeks, you know, so I can.
Yeah, because I was looking over the weekend and
Look
I had
over
some
all
comments,
this.
so this was great that we having a
Still got
discussion.
2 readings though, so.
Well,
you
this
could
is not a,
vote
this
on
ain't
it.
an
No,
ordinance.
I thought you said in 2 weeks, we could come back, cause you still got to vote on the 2 citizens to establish the steering committee, if that's the direction you
Say
want to go.
table it until the committee meeting.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about, the 2 people, are they on here?
No, they
No,
gonna
but we can
apply.
also change
Oh,
it
they gotta
now if
apply,
we want to,
okay.
so. Do we have an example of the application process of that would require, can it just be nomination, or is that the accountability part that we want? For the 2 citizens?
Again, it will be like the planning commission and the board of zoning appeals. They'll fill out an application, you can read everything, we'll bring it to council, and then y'all can vote on those folks. So that's or if you have someone you want to nominate, they can fill out the application. We'll gather all those and distribute those at the council meeting.
Well, why don't we,
I'm a little
why don't we do
concerned.
do that
And I'll tell you
application
why.
session online, post that, and we acquire all those before our next committee night, and then move on this
And
at
if you
that
don't
time.
want anybody on, any citizen on the steering committee,
No, I would like to see citizens for sure.
Absolutely.
It's just the formality of it when you're talking about comprehensive planning. I think I'm a little concerned of how formal we're making it when it's not really, and they're not planning commissioners or zoning board and appeals. It's the steering committee is volunteer. So I guess my concern is, we wanna make sure that it's not too formal to where it does draw kinda like a,
I don't know what your comment
well,
on
the
formal is.
application, like, for me, steering committees, they're all volunteer. For example, the South Carolina Technical System, 16 colleges, they're doing a steering committee, right? What they're calling out is for community influencers. That's what they call it. I'm sure you've heard of YouTuber influencers. So their steering committee, they're trying to get as many input as they can to start steering the direction of what the South Carolina Technical System is gonna look like for X, Y, and Z, right? So and they're not asking for like applications or anything like that. So what I'm saying is I understand that steering committee here at the local level, we want it to be guided by the community. But I don't know, I'm seeing like it being too formal, or maybe what am I missing? I don't know.
I would like for it to be formal, someone that's got a little bit of skin in it, because it's a legal document.
But once they
It
took the
is.
initiative to fill it out, so it means that they're really interested in it, they wanna be a part of it.
And
So
there's
I guess let's not
nothing,
make it difficult then, the application process.
and it's,
So it'll probably just like what they did
I mean, they're not gonna have to write an essay saying this is why they need to be part of
you just
it.
have
it's
to
the
fill
same
in their
thing as,
information.
it's the same thing that Kenny Johns filled out. It'd be we might change one or two words. They wouldn't have to write an essay or anything. It's just an application.
Okay. Because I haven't seen the application, but it seems like if you're just saying it's gonna look like that, very simple. And even if some of our citizens don't know how to use the electronic pad, they can come in and sign up if they wanted to,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just still need to digest it. This is my first time experiencing at the local level. Like I said, the county, they do a lot of, they fund third parties to do it, but I appreciate that we have someone in-house.
We'll, if it's pleasure of the group, we'll just revisit this at committee night. We'll call a council meeting and, cause we do need some direction on this. This'll give y'all time to look over this.
Yes, I'm sure that's fine. Yeah. That
It's
way
just,
we-
what, 2-3 weeks away, or
Yeah.
2 weeks away. It'll be
Just
fine.
get to think on it and look it over, and if we have,
Okay.
cause I bet I'll have questions for the two of you, and right now I
Have
just
you
want
had
some
any
time to
input
think
from
on it.
Mr. Jordan? Has he had any input? Okay.
I think you should we put it out there though, if people are interested?
Yeah, we can, we will, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Alright, so we're gonna basically
Can
table
you help
this
us
to
with
the,
that a little
to
bit?
the next meeting.
Just make a notion in the media that this is coming up.
Yeah, we'll advertise it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need to vote to table or just?
Which not really.
No,
You
I'll
just
just,
know it.
I'll just know we'll just put this back on the agenda for the next meeting, so.
Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Shelly.
Alright, we're down to number 5, discussion on committee and Mayor Pro Tem ordinance update. Mr. Burton, you want to explain where we're headed there, or your thoughts?
Yes, I have been approached by a couple of y'all to look at our committee structure, and also at the first of the year, we've had in-depth discussion about the Mayor Pro Tem election. So I'll just go over that first. The mayor pro tem is elected at the first meeting of every calendar year. There's language in the existing ordinance that says the mayor pro tem can be elected at or new council, but there's not a definition of what new council is. That 4 seats? Is that any new person? So I think if we just clean that up and say mayor pro tem is elected at the first meeting every calendar year, that way you elect a new mayor pro tem every year. So that's one recommendation. The other recommendation is combining some of these committees and not having so many committees and not having committee meetings. The committee would meet as needed. One, consolidation, the planning, zoning, codes, all that would be community development planning committee. Fire and police would be a public safety committee. Infrastructure committee would be utilities, streets and sanitations, and then recreation would be parks and rec. The finance committee, and this is one, finance and administration committee, this is one that I really would like to see changed, would be council as a whole. That way, because I do a budget presentation, I do it to council, but when it goes from the finance committee to council, it's only 3. I would like during that budget process meet with the entire council as that finance committee. The county does that, other jurisdictions do that. I think that would be helpful. Just as I'm talking to the quote finance committee, I'm talking to council. I can get all of y'all's input, and the finance committee doesn't hinge on 3 people. So that's one that if I was asked that I'm very interested in, is that one. That way any contractual matters come up, it's dealt with as council as a whole, because that would fall under administration, and any general government type things would fall under, if it falls under council, all y'all should be involved. So that would be, call it, committee as a whole, so the whole council would be on finance and admin. The rest of them, in the past, the mayor's appointed the committee, and each committee elects the chair. The mayor would be the chair of the finance and administration committee. He's the chair of the council. To kind of speed up some committee nights and reporting, we've sort of adopted a new way. We're just adopting the minutes of the committee meeting. The department heads would send their committee reports to the administrator. I would send them to the committee chair, and then the chair would give the report at the council meeting. And obviously the department heads would still be here to answer specific questions if you have any. And this model would either allow 1 or 2 council meetings a month. There's been some discussion about reducing the number of council meetings that we have. So this model does lend it. And there's other models out there too. This is just a starting point. This by no means is what would work best. You're the council. You can decide your structure, how you want to meet, and all of that. So this is just a starting point. So, but as far as if a staff recommendation, I would like to see the finance and administration council as a whole.
When would this take effect?
You could do it. I talked to our attorney. You could do it on a trial basis, or you'd have to enact an ordinance. So you could do first reading. I mean, you could have it by May, or you could do it July the 1st or January the 1st. It's up again. It's up to y'all.
That was my
this
point.
does not have to be done at any time.
But it's not anything that would happen right away.
No. And really the only guidance I'm looking for tonight, is there any interest in this? Do I need to spend more time on it, or airplane it and move on to something else? So
if I understand what you're saying, if council wants to do this, you would enact an ordinance.
Correct.
Try to put something
Correct.
together that we
Correct.
could look at.
Yes.
I'll make a motion, we look at it.
Brandon, is this kind of a new trend?
It is, and I won't tell you what the latest trend is actually council's doing away with committees altogether, and just doing business as council. But that's really not taking hold here in South Carolina. But I know the municipal association, they've talked about that. Our county, our city attorney is familiar with those kinds of structures. I mean, there's 100 different ways to do this.
Sure.
It just feels like, you know, if council wants to divvy up some of these departments by committee, or if council wants to handle everything as, quote, a committee, council as a committee as a whole.
Under home rule, we can do whatever.
Correct.
I think I think doing away with committee night, I'm into that. They don't do it for the county, and they have far, far more responsibility than we do. And if we need, I do see the advantage of having a committee, for example, the one that I chair, utilities, because, and I stay in pretty I don't know if Scott's still here, I guess not, but we stay in pretty regular communication, because there are situations that people just would like, I mean, he's the expert, but there are situations that people would like just to have a councilman to talk with.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And so he always knows he can just call me and he says, hey, you want to take a ride with me? And I'm sure, and it's just amazing that, I mean, I show up dirtier than anybody else there, you know, but just the fact that I'm a councilman representing the council, and I'm not telling him anything different than he already said, but that just goes a long way with the people.
It does. It does.
And
yeah.
so and since if we have a committee, there's someone that's up on what's going on.
Right.
You know, so that's why I think committees are still a good idea. I may not be up. I may not be up on everything with the police department. I'm on the committee, but I know he is because he's the chair.
Yeah.
Well, if you go back to this, and I'm glad you mentioned that up, police and fire will be under public safety with this proposal, so that only leaves one person to chair that.
Oh,
So
okay,
my
yeah.
understanding is, I think as it sits here, this brings us down from 7 committees to 5, is that correct? Okay.
Four,
So,
actually.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah,
Oh.
actually four.
4.
And
Because
'cause one
finance
is
would
the
be,
whole group.
yeah, finance would be council.
So then, we're 7, so that means not all 7 of us will have a committee to chair.
Correct. You would rotate around. Or you would keep the same committee structure. It's however you want to do it.
Well, if you take the finance and admin, and now we're just, all of us are together on that, so basically you're doing away with that committee. Because it's the council, and that leaves how many as it's currently set up? 1 for each of us, doesn't it?
Yes, there's 7 committees. Well, there would be 6 committees.
Yeah.
Right, I think that works well, because each one, whether we rotate around, just when mayor, you know, every new council, he shifts us around, whatever, but at least there is one person that is involved. I think we need to be involved. That's how I'd like to see it.
Well, I mean, you and I've talked about this quite a bit, and I'm on all of it. I'm with it, but I like keeping our committee separated, I think, other than the finance and government.
Like the fire and police,
Yeah,
separate?
just keep our committees like we are, where we each chair a committee. And
So you're on 2 committees. Do you chair 2 committees?
I'm on the.
You're on finance right now, so there wouldn't be a chair on
And
finance.
then we're sharing
Community development.
community development.
So you could, I mean, just right now, you could take community development,
Yeah,
right?
if we did
Because
it.
you have fire already.
Well, well, and I know we're already in this budget process, and it'd be toward the end for this
Oh,
to
yeah.
change anyway. Here would be my proposal on this. I would propose that you print this up and email it to us, just like you just presented it, except combining the committees. And if we all pick at it and like what this says and how it's gonna work, I personally would not wanna implement it until January 1st. With the new mayor and the new council, you know, whatever the elections go, that's that's when this should take place, cause that's when the committee appointments take place.
But so you don't wanna, you wanna keep on having committee meetings until January?
Well,
I don't mind if we don't change,
not
I'm saying
necessarily
let's-
the
yeah.
meetings like we are, but I'm just talking about the draw up of it.
I guess in
Yeah.
that respect, you would be enacting something to hold a new council to, so I would advise against that.
Oh.
Either make the change at July the 1st, or not at all and leave it to the new,
That
the
makes
new
sense,
council,
man.
cause 4 seats are up, because you.
Well, we could still
you
make that change
Typically
July
don't want to,
1st.
you don't want to obligate.
Yeah, we
and
can
Just
make it
not
July
change the
1st.
appointments
Yeah.
until January 1st.
And that's.
That's
that
what
was
I was-
an
How it's
option
supposed
too.
to be
That's
done now.
that's what
Yeah.
I was concerned about.
And
not making-
that's-
yeah.
So this is the way I'm looking.
So that
at it.
works.
So if I've got, so the police department, we have something that needs to, we meet as a committee. Say something happens with the police department, Tim calls or the chief calls me, and then we call a meeting with that committee. The committee meets, and then we decide at that time if we need to take it to council or not.
Honestly, you need to work through your administrator. That's
Copy
what,
that. You're
that's
right.
what I'm
You're
hired for.
right.
And I'll just say that some of this helps me.
You're right.
I appreciate you going out with department heads, but if I don't know what's going on.
You've
So
been there
that's-
anyway, I didn't mean
Right,
like
but
that. You've
there,
been
there's
there
a lot of
anyway.
that needs to go through the administrator.
What would happen is Tim would call me, or he'd call you first, and this happened with the recreation departments, that's the way that it would work. Just like that.
If we needed direction from the committee on something, yes.
And
If there's not a policy or an ordinance that gives us direction,
Gotcha.
we would call y'all.
But we still have to follow state rules, and we'll have to give 24 hours
Yes.
notice for
Yes.
the meeting,
We did that
notify the
last time,
press.
so.
We gotta go through the process.
Yeah.
Well, if we keep committees, do we, trying to just remember state law, do we not have to meet 4 times a year by law?
You have to meet, that's your rule, I believe.
Is it?
Yeah.
I remember it somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That's a what?
That's council's rule.
Oh, that's
I
council's
believe,
rule.
I'll have to double check.
I
and
just
see.
remember reading it, I can't remember which
I
part
think
I
you're
read
right.
it in.
Well, why don't you, come back to us
Okay.
in a couple of
Okay.
weeks with some, you've heard our feedback, come with some thoughts on what we might do. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. You guys in agreement?
Okay.
Y'all be thinking about it, and at the next,
That makes all right.
at the next committee meeting, y'all can discuss this more, and you might have
Yeah.
epiphanies since then, and hey.
In the
Work on it
meantime,
tonight,
if
so.
you have any thoughts, send them to Mr. Burton.
Just while we're all here talking, I don't wanna, like we talked about me going with Scott.
Right.
Now, that's generally just dealing with the public. It's not having him do anything. Do you want to know about every time
He-
I do that?
He lets me know.
Oh, okay.
So I know,
Okay.
but there's just things that if y'all go out and make an agreement with somebody, and I don't know about it, and I jump Scott and said, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Well, this was the agreement that was made. It puts the department head, and it puts me in a bad position.
Oh, yeah. No,
So,
we're not making
and
any
that's
agreement.
that's not happened. I just,
Yeah.
there's, when we have this discussion about, committee directing operations of the department or the administrator, it kinda needs to flow through the administrator, so.
So what do you guys think about this? And I don't know, this is just kinda how I've seen it, but in relations to your committees, I've kinda looked at it that I'm kind of the liaison in that committee between the townsfolk and
The city.
the city.
Yep.
Is that how we all see it?
Yeah, and that's a good thing, but as always, everybody just needs to be in.
And they've got, the public has that person. I know Grant, he's a utility chairman. I call him. Sarai's on the fire committee, I call her. If they need to speak to a council person about something about a department,
Okay.
they have that. They
All
have,
right.
cause a lot of times they don't wanna talk to staff. They'd rather talk to council.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Let's go to item 6,
Oh, we're all gonna
the
be sure to get
discussion on a nuisance alarm ordinance.
In the past, they've had a nuisance alarm ordinance for false fire alarms. It has just been pertained to the fire department, yes, the fire department. The police department saw an uptick in just nuisance alarms as well, so we've kind of retooled the ordinance and proposed, some changes there, one to cover, police and it covers fire as well. That way, if someone just has a fire alarm or a burglar alarm that just will not stop and it burns up personnel time to keep going out there, they'll either fix it or, they get assessed a fine. And the fine's been in place in years. We've never enforced it. But the fine structure was there.
Is it the same structure?
It's a little bit different. The third and fourth fire alarm was, in the current ordinance, is $250 each. We've cut that back down to $60 for residential and $125 for commercial. So it actually reduced some of the service charges. And again, we just like direction on whether to move this to council, move it to committee, or.
Can I ask a fire chief question?
Absolutely.
So, when you get a fire alarm, you rolling how many vehicles?
It depends on the size.
Okay.
If it's a commercial building, we're taking an aerial device and an engine. If we have enough manpower, possibly aerial and 2 engines, plus, myself and Terry, depending on where the commercial structure is, time of day, so you're looking anywhere between 2 to 7 vehicles, 3 fire apparatus, 2 chief officers, and a handful of volunteers going to it. So you're talking a lot of apparatus, a lot of manpower, a lot of time per alarm. Residentials, normally you're gonna take 2 engines. Commercials change drastically due to the size and manufacture of the building, so that's where the aerial comes into play.
How many false alarms have you seen in one day? That's all off of one building?
In one day, off of one building, I think the historical number is 19.
Wow. And that's a lot of time to bring that vehicle out. You
Just
gotta bring them out
just
every
in the
time.
past, winter, I know both of us, our departments were slammed with, alarms due to water and cold. I think during that entire weekend, probably combined, it was close to 300 alarms just in 3 days between 2 departments. Now a lot of those are due to weather, so that wouldn't really, that would be tied up in the 1 to 2, but we do have several buildings we go to. I know we go to about 6 or 7 times a week, and I think y'all go to upwards of 40 to 50 times a week. And that's just one building for the same issue over and over again, and they refuse to get the alarm fixed.
It make it all danger in itself, cause you're using up manpower from the police department. You got one officer that's checking the alarm, and you could have another officer that's he could be on a domestic. And then with the fire department, you got the vehicles leaving out of there, somebody, the possibility of having a wreck, that's a lot of time and money, so.
It's increasing the liability not only for our staff, but also for the community. We're driving emergent because we treat every alarm. I know we treat every fire alarm as a true structure fire. I don't know how the police operates on there, so I'm sure they treat similar in nature. Driving high speeds down the road, you start increasing frequency, you start increasing risk. The more times that happens, the more times something's liable to go wrong. The more we can reduce that, the safer the community will be, the safer the staff.
But back to Chief, what you said, you're having a particular business that's 15, 20 alarms on a weekend?
There are some in town, yes. I'm hesitant to speak specific ones, but we go and you know before you're going there, unfortunately, it's probably just another false alarm because you've had so many. And that in and of itself it becomes dangerous. Complacency is dangerous when you go to the same one. And I also think that while we're there checking that one, and some of these are fairly large buildings. When the officer's there, we get out, we check the windows, we check the doors, we're checking if a door happens to be unlocked. Building is secure, but the door is unlocked. We're gonna check inside that building to make sure there's no one inside that. Meanwhile, while my officers are there at that particular alarm, there probably is something going on that we could actually tend to or maybe prevent the crime from happening. I think the repetitiveness, for us is a problem. Obviously, the fire department will, it costs more to operate their vehicles, it's more manpower, my units are smaller, it costs a little bit less, but, it's still the same repetitive, it's expensive for us, time consuming, and dangerous.
Do,
There is also another point I'd like to point out, we also don't always go to the alarm we should be going to sometimes because the alarm system's malfunctioning. So a lot of times we get told out for a burglar alarm and they get told out for a fire alarm, which is, again, back to the panel not communicating properly, which puts us in, by itself in a bad situation. Police department pulls up on a working fire, we pull up on a guy inside, on a building, with somebody inside with a gun trying to rob the place. It's kind of the wrong department, don't wanna cross-dress our alarms, but, to make sure that we're suited and responding the right way, and a lot of those alarms could be fixed with proper maintenance.
do you have a lot of this in residential as well?
We have a good many residential. Again, unfortunately, it tends to be the same ones over and over again. If somebody has 2 or 3 in a year's time, I don't think for us, we're not overly concerned about that. But there are some that we go to, residential multiple times a year.
And is that because the alarm system is not working properly and they will not have it repaired?
For us, generally, that's what it is. Occasionally, we will have one where they accidentally had the alarm on, they didn't get to the panel quick enough. Those are a different case to me. There are some that are just problematic.
I'll make a motion that we adopt that, just like it is.
I'll second.
So you wanna move this to council?
Yep.
I'll second.
You brought the money, could you read the fees, what they were, and what you brought them down to?
In the past, the fee was, false alarm, first and second call, false alarm, no charge, third and fourth within 1 year, 12-month period, $250 each. Fifth call, $500, sixth call, is $1,000 each. That is on the existing ordinance.
Is that on commercial, residential, or
It
both?
does not differentiate.
Okay.
It just says service charge, for, a false alarm. For the proposed one, residential, first and second, 0, third, 60, fourth, 120, fifth, 240, sixth, 480, and from 6 and beyond would be 480 per each. Commercial would be first and second, 0, third, 125, fourth, 250, 500, sixth, 1,000, and beyond each additional one would be 1,000.
And I can see, because of commercial, what they talk about, the big buildings, so they go in and take a
Costs
lot of
more.
time. I had to search a building, it took us like 4 hours just to search that building, so,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion, we move it on to council.
Do I have a second?
Yep, I did.
Motion and a second. So, this will come back as an ordinance, or is this first reading of the ordinance?
No, it'll come back at the next council meeting as an ordinance.
Okay.
If that's your direction, if that's what it's voted on.
Any other questions on this?
Does it just need to be in that committee sends it to council? Is that what we need to have? Just 2 on that committee vote for it and send it?
No, this is a council meeting,
Yeah.
not a committee meeting, so. Not committee night, so I need council.
So
vote on
why
it.
does anything need voted? You just bring it up as an ordinance.
I just wanted to honestly gauge y'all's temperature and make sure
Yeah,
you're okay
okay.
with it, so.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Either you wanted, us to do more work on it, like the vacant building, or you're fine with it as read, and we'll send it on to council. Or if you need other time and send it to committee for the committee to work on it, committee night, we can do it again. But
Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Just so I can have clarity, this ordinance will be brought up, is the ordinance 2006-5, or to repeal it and put put the new, or are you gonna name it a new ordinance?
Yes, that'll be the title. The title will be,
The regulated false fire alarms to which the fire department responds and to.
the new
rescind.
title, yes, will be an ordinance to repeal and replace ordinance 2006-5 to regulate false nuisance alarms to which Public Safety Services of the City of Walhalla responds.
Gotcha, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I don't know what the ordinance number will be, probably number 2. We'll just assign those.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess, so we don't have this, you're just gonna change the number, do we have the new one?
I don't have the new one, no, because it's not, I'll assign the number.
So it's just exactly the same?
No, it's adding police, because that 2006 only addresses fire.
Oh, I
And
see.
it changes the fines on it too.
Yeah, and it changes the
Okay.
fee structure, it reduces those.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right. All in favor of bringing this to council as an ordinance? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't think there is any, so got that one took care of. Let's go to number 7, outdoor burning ordinance update.
Same as, I'm just looking for direction to move this to
Yeah, that
council
one.
or committee. Currently, we have a burn ordinance, for residential. It states what, they can and cannot burn and the fines and all that. We would like to update that to reflect the new DHEC regulations and to add a commercial permit. So if someone wants to have a big bonfire, burn pit, whatever, behind a bar, restaurant, store, whatever, they get an annual permit. That way the fire department knows there's supposed to be a column of smoke coming up behind 123 Main Street. It's a permitted smoke, so.
Will there be a fine or fee to
Ye-
get that permit?
Yes, the annual permit would be $50. Now, for residential, there's no permit fees. For commercial, there'd be an annual fee of $50. Fines, the second offense, if we go out to residential, will be 50, 100 for the third, 200 would be for the fourth, and then you would get the fifth. You would be banned from any type of burning, and that would probably get you a visit with a judge. Commercial would follow the same thing with fines increased. Yes,
So what you're saying is like, if I got a big, brush pile behind my house, I still need to call and get a number from the fire department.
yes.
But if I've got just a little bitty burned pit at the house and we're sitting around, roasting marshmallows, and, we wouldn't have to call
A lot of people do call, but depending on the size, correct?
Yes, sir. Normally, if you have an actual burn pit, it's normally regulated, especially if you're burning marshmallows, stuff of that nature. It's considered cooking along with DHEC and South Carolina Forestry Commission regulations. You don't have to call and get a permit, however, we would highly recommend you do, because any fire that we get called out to, we will respond to. So if you don't want us pulling up in your driveway, you call and let us know, hey, they have a permit, everything's good, you know, it's okay, it's under control.
So you don't charge for that though on the residential, what they're saying?
Residential, the only way that we would enforce any fees is if we go, the fire gets out, or if they're burning in unsafe burn conditions, and either the fire is left unattended, or they're not burning proper material, or it's unsafe, and we have to extinguish that fire. Make the determination the fire needs to be extinguished, then that's where it would be marked up, that the fee would then start to apply after so many times of responding to that residence. As far as commercials, the fee, the permit's good for 1 year, so the commercial, use would not have to call and get every day and get a burn permit number from the fire department, they get an annual permit. But with that comes the responsibility of checking the weather and the regulations and guidelines that's attached to the ordinance that's been proposed. And that way, if they do anything or burn something that's not regulated, not permitted, or is unsafe, at that point, if we have determined we have to go out and extinguish that fire, then there would be a fee that would associate with that as well.
How many burnings have you had on a Sunday?
On a Sunday, to
Mhm.
be honest with you, a lot.
Mm.
But ordinance, states
was looking at. Especially when I was reading over the weekend, there's absolutely no burning allowed on Sundays according to this policy from 1996.
Yes, ma'am.
So what I'm hearing is we're gonna update that policy to what you were just saying now. Our digital gadgets are dead. We're looking at paper and sharing
Mine's
stuff.
about to shut off.
Okay, so that's interesting.
And that's only something that would, continue, and I think is even in this, proposed ordinance. That's something that historically, a lot of people during that time have minutes with their family, things of that nature. It's not that time for communion amongst the community, and that's not something they wanna be surrounded, with smoke or having that congested atmosphere in the environment. That's only the reason for no burning on Sundays, and we would promote fellowship within the community with their families.
Same here. Still right there.
All right, we hadn't had a motion or anything on this, have we? Any other, do we someone wanna make a motion that we move this forward?
I make a motion to move it to council.
I see.
It's still there.
Motion and a second, is there any other discussion?
Yeah, so I was looking on, I had it on there and that went dead, so now I'm trying to find it on the paper. It mentioned about, agricultural burning. Am I finding,
You still gotta call and get a permit for that.
right, no types of burning, permit holders. I thought I read, and I can't find it here, that burning, when you're bringing, agricultural burning's permitted with a burn permit. But I read in here that you can't bring anything from off that site and burn it.
I can read it. if
Oh,
you'd
please.
like. I got it.
Mhm.
Says, burning for the purposes of agriculture or land management purposes can only burn material that originated on site and not moved from one site to another location. That's
See,
what it says.
Right, and I read that. See, currently, we do that. We bring in our landscaping business, we'll bring in brush, we'll burn it, but I want the ash to use on the gardens. And so that serves the purpose of getting the ash, just like I bring stuff in and I wood chip it, and I use the wood chips.
Yes, sir.
So this would keep me from doing that.
That actually is not something that we came up with. That's actually state law with the South Carolina Forestry Commission. So
Oh.
that is straight from their regulations along with South Carolina PHAC.
So I can't
I
bring,
don't have any control over that. If you
Really?
wanna take that up with them, more power to you.
no,
But
so
I've learned to
I'm
comply
breaking
with
a
their-
law and I don't know it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The reason being is, I guess the same thing along with if you did land management on a property during your landscaping business, and you got clippings of nuisance, grasses, bushes, clippings, and you brought that onto your property to burn, you might burn, but it still could come back, same thing with kudzu. So then you would be taking something that is a nuisance plant, you would be bringing it to your property inside the city, and then you would be burning it. You might be burning it to the best of your ability, but that doesn't mean that it won't start to grow and become a problem on your property and then face the city as well.
You're all just overwhelmed by kudzu because of me. The kudzu monster.
The emerald ash borer and the hip woolly adelgid and all that, that's, honestly, that law is for weeds and noxious pests to keep them from moving from one area to the other. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, cause a lot of bugs and parasites will latch on to brush and then they can move to other healthy areas, so that's,
Those lake people just are infested and they don't know it.
yep.
All right, any other questions on this? We got a motion and a second, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Any other question? All in favor of moving this to council? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It will come back to council and we can discuss it further. discussion on controlling dog ordinance update. Mr. Burt.
Okay, we have an existing ordinance from 1980 that had a leash law. The city had a leash law, and in 1987, it was repealed. Basically, they considered a dog under verbal command or whatever to be controlled. So this goes back to it shall be unlawful for anyone to keep or maintain any vicious or ferocious dog. If any person or property is damaged by such dog, they'll be found in violation of the section. There's a thing in here about dogs not being a nuisance to property, tearing up flowers, etc. Obviously, the rabies, that's state law, and we want to make sure that we've got that required as well. Keep your animals locked up if they're in heat, and then dogs at large are not permitted. In this, you have to have a dog restrained by a leash in the control of a competent person.
Have a motion.
Do we still have, like, so if we're having a problem with an animal, do we still call animal control in the county, or we have to handle it on our own, or? And how do we?
Yes and no.
Okay, how do we enforce that? So who writes the citation?
City.
City.
City ends up handling all of it.
Okay, the county just handles the animal.
The city ends up handling most of it.
Alright. I had to wrestle some dogs myself, so.
Do we have a definition of what vicious dogs are categorized as?
No, there's not a definition in here, and that's something that we can add.
Okay.
How do we transport that? Never mind.
The city handles its problems.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to move it to council,
I'll say.
and then we can have an ordinance in front of us and discuss it.
Well, we have a proposed
Oh,
one too, right?
yeah.
Yes.
I
that
know.
way, but this would move it to council.
Yeah.
Where does in the old ordinance, we're in discussion on this, are we?
Well, we
Yes.
got a motion and a second now, I believe, so yes. we are.
Okay. In the first one, I saw in the second one about the howling dogs. And is there any of that howling in the first ordinance, Brandon?
I don't think so. Let me run back.
Didn't we have a dog nuisance ordinance?
Yeah, it's here. Is this?
The barking dogs was handled under a separate ordinance under noise,
Noise
not
ordinance.
specifically
Dog
dogs.
nuisance ordinance.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was
okay,
under
so we
noise.
don't have that one here.
It was-
Could we get a copy of that one?
Of the noise ordinance, yes.
So when we have it compared to, and it talk, in the noise ordinance, it mentions dogs.
I believe so.
It was
Okay.
a barking dog nuisance is what it was is you, say if your dog's barking, we'd go out there and you still write a warning on the first time, or?
I just went and looked at the current, and it does have, about a nuisance dog in there, but there is no specification as to what that may be or to how much time, may be in there. I think this one specifies that, we've had some dogs bark.
Yeah.
I think anybody that has a dogs bark, some questions have come up of disagreement between a dog owner and maybe the neighbor that made the complaint, that their dog was barking, but not too much. The neighbor may not agree with that. My understanding is new, proposed ordinances that would clear that up, and there would be some definition in there as to what too much was, or what was a nuisance versus what was not.
So, let's say we've got a nuisance dog and he's, is he grandfathered in? You know, because it's been doing this for years.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we have a thing, say, no, Fido's gotta be quiet.
I think the same, in my
Okay.
opinion on that would be the same as with any
And I figure, I live in a tent, I live in a city, I expect to have neighbors, and otherwise I could live out in the country and have just peace. So, so then you're just like, well, how far do we go with this? Saying, it's like being in an apartment building, but you don't ever wanna hear your neighbors.
But you ain't gonna call the police 'cause you're good with it, so they're not gonna go out anyway.
No, I'm not, yeah, I'm good with, I'll put up with it, but say you got, are we creating just to have dissension among neighbors?
We already have the complaints.
Okay, you're seeing it,
Mechanism to.
you're seeing it pretty regularly, this kind of thing.
Barking dogs, not so much. The dogs at large, which a lot of this covers has become a serious problem that we're dealing with, up to and including people's dogs trying to bite police officers when we go to check on
Okay.
those calls.
Somebody walking down the sidewalk, walking their dog, and another one comes out on them, we've had that before too,
Right.
so.
We sure have.
Okay, so we could take that up when we see this ordinance about the howling dogs, but you're not having a big problem with that.
No, we do have from time to time, but no. I can think
Okay.
of several around town that have complained and we really have been unable to determine what is a nuisance and what's not, kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
They're like, you don't particularly find it to be a nuisance, but someone else might, so.
Yeah. Well, this is real strict, I mean, for 4 minutes and
All right,
lock 'em up.
we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of moving this to council?
Aye.
You
Aye.
didn't vote,
All right, unanimous.
but it's the current one. You will go to jail.
Current one's right there. That's
All
not
right,
it.
now we're
it's
going
the
to
old one.
executive session.
Yes, sir.
I move to go to
Oh,
executive
yeah,
session.
current, you're right.
The other one's for.
Second, all in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Okay.
So what I'm saying here is, it's against the law for your dog to be unleashed,
Thank all of you for coming.
that they don't have a leash. So you
I'm
get
gonna
a
get by to
first
see you
offense,
one
you
day.
get a
I
warning
keep
for the
saying
first
I'm
offense,
going to,
fine,
and-
or
We've discussed a couple of matters, and at this point, the economic development matter, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to give the administrator authority to move on the RFQ.
All right,
So,
motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Don't think there is any. So that one's unanimous, and on the contractual matter, no action taken. Do I hear a motion we adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Aye. I think everybody's ready. Do we keep these? You
Yeah, you
want
can
them
keep
back?
those. Yeah, thank